of truth. He is Abuki Cabal. You are listening to Abuki Cabal.
Welcome to the Abuki Cabal Show.
What's going on, everybody? I know it's been a long time. I apologize. I had to build a new computer. I accidentally did it too. This was a little loud, so you may hear it in the background. So I apologize in advance. Hopefully I can get some filters on the fact to try to minimize this, the fans in this new case. Can't really get it far enough away from the mic to, dumb down the sound a little bit. But since we're going through all this stuff with Fox Sports and whatnot, and everybody's acting like they're shocked that women are out here leveraging sex for positions in these networks. So I want to take a dive into how we got here. How do we get to the point to where women push themselves into these positions in male sports, broadcasting? I'm going to take a look at how something that is to me a no-brainer. How do you get women into a position where they convince the masses that they should be able to go into the locker rooms of these athletes, these male athletes, in various forms of undress? I used to play, sports myself. I played, Little League all the way up to, high school, played a little bit after that, played a little bit in the military, football, basketball, track, things like that. And I'm aware of the activities, that go on inside of locker rooms, so for guys who have never, played sports, and don't know about how rowdy it can get, in these locker rooms, I'm gonna shed a little light on that. I myself, I remember days when, we would be in the locker rooms and whatnot, getting undressed or dressed before the games, dressing out. After the games, I mean, you're taking showers, you're naked, running through there in front of other guys and whatnot. And then somebody had their harebrained, idea that female reporters should be able to go off into the locker room with all these naked guys, testosterone filled, guys that, are essentially the gladiators of our time. And, these women should be able to just sit in there with these buck naked men, and nobody is going to act as if they're naked. She's going to act as if, hey, she doesn't see, their members and whatnot. And she's just going to conduct an interview, and nothing's going to happen. I used to be in the military. I guess you guys know that now. For the longest, we didn't allow women to be in certain, jobs due to the close proximity that they would be in with these, with men, which would cause men to act in ways that would be, let's just say, not necessarily beneficial to their climbing, the ladder of success in the military. Okay, so if you put women into these positions, just like if you put women into the positions of these locker rooms, things are going to happen. They're going to see things. Men are going to do stupid things because men do stupid things when they're not in there. Okay. And these women will think that these things are being done just because they're there, but things like flying jock straps, and horseplay and things take place when these guys are in there. Okay? You have guys do stupid things, things that you will laugh at and just go on about your business with. Nowadays, some of those things would be considered to be, women would call these things, homosexual or whatnot, but they wouldn't be. It's just men horseplaying, men peeing on people's legs and whatnot, and the guy get grossed out and run out of the shower, things like that, guys, throwing jock straps at other guys, with their, testicle smells and whatnot on it. And guys, you're fighting about things like this because of, things that might have happened in the game, guys insulting other guys in ways that men do when they're doing silly shit, and they just blow it off, okay? So, back then, men doing man things was not anything that people would think was strange. Nowadays, we've allowed women to repackage these things and use them to pretty much make us look like we are doing things that are not manly. Okay. So we're going to delve into that a little bit. I don't want to, ramble on. I want to, kind of be focused on this. But we're going to, talk about how these women force their way into these questionable areas. I mean, think about today. What if men were to say, okay, since you allow these women in the locker room, these female reporters, I want to be in the locker rooms of these girls in, say the WNBA, when they're right after they're out of their games and whatnot, when they're in various forms of nakedness, we'll say. How do you think that would go over today? I don't think it would go over pretty well. I don't think it would go over at all. I mean, we got people calling people pedophiles and all kinds of things with little or no evidence, calling guys all out of their names and whatnot for doing absolutely nothing, for doing things that are basically consensual nowadays. And all of this is from basically women being kind of out of pocket. They don't know where they're supposed to be, their place. We all have a place, in society, and we don't move into these other places because it invites things to happen, I'll say. But anyway, let's just get on with the show, and we'll dig into this a little bit. And I've got another little tidbit, that kind of cements this. But we'll get into the story first on how they did it, and see what you guys think about that. Okay, so here we are with this story about the locker rooms opening up to female journalists in the 70s here. Okay, and we're gonna take a look at this a little bit. So you have you see the young lady here. This is from Sports History Weekly. I'll add this to the description in the story there. So you have this lady, Robin Herman, of the New York Times, first female sports writer inside the men's locker room in 1975. Herman and Marcel St. Cyr were the first women allowed to conduct post-game interviews inside men's locker rooms. So here you got this guy here with his bare cheeks out here right next to her, and He's got his jock strap on here. Here's the other guy here. He's, got a T-shirt on, underwear there. Here you got a guy sitting there, which this is nothing to another guy. You sitting in there letting these guys get dressed, and you're basically in there trying not to be in the way, but at the same time, while you guys are getting undressed and whatnot, I'm going to ask you a few questions about the game and whatnot, and it's not a big deal because that man, that male reporter is trying to get the story, and he's going to get in and get out, okay? Now, we're supposed to believe that this woman is going to be able to get in there and get to do the same job and not feel out of place by doing so. Okay, so we'll go on with the story here. So it says, few landmark court decisions come down in the world of sports, but 40 years ago this month, and this was 2018 that the story was written, so it's kind of old, says a federal judge ruled that women reporters, it wasn't women then, female reporters could not be barred from interviewing players inside the locker room. In January 1975, 2 female journalists became their own story after breaking the sex barrier in the locker room at a NHL All-Star game in Montreal. They were the first women reporters admitted into the dressing room of a North American professional sports team. Okay? So, as I was doing my research for this story, that is true. So these 2 are the first. But then Major League Baseball had an incident where Bowie Kuhn, MLB commissioner in 1977 and 1978, had a unwritten but understood policy that barred women from reporting from men's locker rooms because, he said, to permit members of the opposite sex into this place of privacy where players are in states of undress would undermine the dignity of the game. Okay? So then they filed a lawsuit, and in the lawsuit, the courts ruled against the commissioner in May of 1978. And this ruling opened up the floodgates to allow women into the locker rooms of every other men's league, men's professional sports leagues throughout the country. Okay, so in the words of Dr. Ian in Jurassic Park, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean that you should do a thing. There are unforeseen, circumstances and things that happen as a result of these decisions. Now, the courts may have thought that they were doing a great service to these women by allowing them to go off into these locker rooms. But nowadays, we're having, things like lawsuits, things like, women saying that they're being sexually accosted in these locker rooms because, they are not seen as reporters and not just women. So, have you ever heard of a man going and go, "I'm a reporter, not a man"? Nobody ever does that. No. You're a woman. There's nothing that's going to change that. And there are certain things that are going to happen when men and women are in certain environments, especially when men are in various forms of undress, and keyed up after a sports event, So these things did happen, but these women use these things, to file lawsuits and to basically try to hold these men accountable for essentially being men in their own environment. Which they force their way into. It's kind of like a black person saying, "I'm going to be the first Negro in the Klan. I'm going to force my way into the Klan, and I'm going to make them accept me." That's ignorant. Why would anybody do that? And what is going to be the difference between you getting the story before they go into the locker room or after they come out of the locker room? Is the story going to be different? Is it going to be less hot? Is it going to be a worse story? Why do you have to be in a room with a bunch of half-naked men in order for you to get the story? Oh, maybe it's because the men would have access, so they would get the story before the woman would have access to the story. But if everybody had the same access where, okay, you got to catch them before they get to the locker room. You can't go in the locker room, men and women. I think that would have been acceptable. But for some reason, that was never brought up. Okay, so let's go on with the article here. Okay, so Robin Herman, photo above, is the first female sports writer to join the New York Times. And Marcel St. Cyr, a radio reporter based in Montreal, were granted access by coaches to conduct post-game interviews of players inside the changing facilities. When the news broke, Herman said, "I'm not the story. The game is the story. But the account of the girls in the locker room overshadowed and ho-hum the hockey match that they saw the Wales Conference trounce the Campbell Conference 7-1. Women on the sports beat was a rarity, and even then, they were placed at a professional disadvantage, having to wait outside in the hallways. Ambitious ones knew that the locker room was the best place to capture the pulse of a team and the players." Questionable, but if you say so. It's in that inner sanctum that the team spirit and players' emotions are revealed and unscripted. The euphoria and the elation, the heartbreak and the misery. While ladies were asked to wait outside until the players came out, their male peers were busy inside taking notes and holding up the microphone to record their subjects. The headline event at the Montreal Forum took place at the height of the women's liberation movement, and it wasn't long before other sports teams followed the NHL's lead, namely in the NBA. But permitting women to enter the testosterone-infused confines depended on the whims of the team, its managers, or the league. The prevailing attitude was still sexist, and Herman and St. Cyr received their share of hate mail, deriding them as flimsy flirts and whores who knew little about the game itself. It wasn't until 2 years later that legal measures were taken to prohibit gender exclusion, and it came in the form of a lawsuit against a man who ran America's favorite pastime, baseball commissioner Bowie Kuhn. Just told you about him. Okay, so let's revisit this part, this section up here where they said that basically they, were calling them out of their names, calling them, flimsy flirts and whores who knew little about the game. Okay, that brings us back to, what we were seeing in Fox, So you had, members of the Fox team saying that basically women were demanding places on shows as if they were equals. But they were young women who didn't know much about sports at all, who were basically arguing with these men who had either played sports or who had covered sports for decades. Some of them professional sports players who had played the game, had coached the game, who were knew the game backwards and forwards. But these girls were basically just pretty faces that were trying to get their time in the sun there and demanding equality in this, but you don't know the same as your male counterparts. These guys are there because they know the game, because they played the game. Why are you here? You're here because you are pretty, and you're going to get I guess their motive is you're going to get men to watch. Well, men will watch sports without women being involved. They always have, they always will. But for some reason, we've gone from having people who are in sports reporters, sportscasters, that look a certain way, look professional, from when they first started doing it, to now they're OnlyFans girls who are basically having sex behind the scenes, showing off cleavage on camera, wearing suggestive things on camera. We saw the same things with Fox News. If you look at the difference between Fox News and CNN or CNBC or all these other places, you'll see that all of the women on Fox News have cleavage showing, sexy dresses on, their hair is totally different. One of the, when I first noticed it, I noticed that there was a economics reporter that used to work for CNN. She went to Fox. She was professional on CNN. When she went to Fox, oh my God, she was in a totally different kind of dress. Her hair was all, sexied up. Her breasts were all pushed up. It was a whole different affect. And here we go with that. Fox has had various lawsuits that have come to the forefront that say that basically these women are saying that if they didn't, look a certain way and they, that they were not being promoted, that they were being hit on constantly. But you know what? They call that sexual harassment. But is sexual harassment not when a man asks and you say no? A man is supposed to ask, and once you say no, okay. Men in the past have asked again, maybe up to 3 times, because women have said, when they're honest, that they like men being persistent. Okay? Now, if you go overboard with that, then it becomes harassment, okay? Okay? So a man's supposed to ask. You cannot penalize a man for asking. And if you have women in this type of environment, guess what? You're going to get propositioned. You're going to see things. You're going to, be put in a position where this is going to happen over and over and over. So you're going to have a thick skin. But what we find is women don't get thick skins. They go to the courts. And back then, they went to the courts just to have access, but now they go to the courts to get paid. It's the new come up. Okay? So let's get back into Bowie Kuhn. Okay, so Melissa Lutke was an accredited 20-something reporter from Sports Illustrated when she was granted access to the Yankees clubhouse at the end of 1977 baseball season. The Los Angeles Dodgers, who went on to face the New York franchise at the Fall Classic, also voted as a team to allow her to interview them inside the locker room. But midway through the first game of the World Series, MLB overruled the Dodgers and the Yankees, disallowing all female journalists from reporting inside the dressing rooms. Pleading with the Commission of Baseball, but to no avail, Lutke and Time Inc., because Time Magazine was the parent company of Sports Illustrated. And it goes on to say that parent of Sports Illustrated brought a lawsuit against Bowie Kuhn on the grounds that Lutke's 14th Amendment rights were violated when she was denied access as a female journalist to the team clubhouse. Okay? So I wonder if men could say, if I can't be allowed in the females' locker room, with buck-naked females, that's against my 14th Amendment rights. Because this is all supposed to be about equality, right? So that would be fair game. Don't you think? Okay, let's move on. Okay, so named in the lawsuit were also various officials of New York City, including then Mayor Abe Beame, since they were charged with overseeing anti-discriminatory compliance with the lease of Yankee Stadium. Okay, at the heart of Lucky's fundamental right to pursue her profession as a woman, which otherwise granted men an unfair advantage, Kuhn's argument was that his decision was necessary to protect the image of baseball as a family sport and preserve traditional notions of decency and propriety. What do you guys think? You think it was a logical argument for him to do that? I think so, you know. And I think what I would have done is I would have said nobody's going to go in the locker room then. Since women want to go in the locker room, nobody's going to the locker room. All men and women will have to have access to the players once the game is over, before they go into the locker room, or before the game after they come out of the locker room. You have to catch him somewhere in between. Sorry, that's what he probably should have done. As opposed to, having this, get out of control and be taken out of his hands. Okay, so in closing, not surprisingly, female journalists would still encounter various forms of lewd behavior while reporting from inside, but landmark decision of September 26, 1978 put away what some call the male bastion of sports journalism. Okay, so here again, and you guys have heard me say in the past how women have always forced their way into male spaces, because, they wanted to have access. They wanted to get in there. It's like a magical place to them. It's kind of like, Saturday Night Live did this skit one time about the women's bathroom, and these men snuck into the women's bathroom, and it was like all this stuff in there, all this magical stuff. It was bigger inside than the men's bathroom. It was, cleaner. It was just like a palace on the inside of it. I think in women's heads, I think that they believe that's what it's like in men's spaces. Look, men used to have cigar rooms. Now there are women all in the cigar rooms. All the hookah bars and all that shit, that was all men's stuff. Now what do you see? You see a bunch of women trying to act like men. Whatever a man has that they deem special, they want it. They are going to destroy the world to get in there. They don't think about all the other, things that could happen as a result of them getting in there, like being sexually, suggested behavior, being witness to that, or men doing and saying things, around them and to them that they may find distasteful. But to men, it's regular conversation. It's horseplay is what we used to call it. Okay? All right. So here's a little piece here that I think is kind of important for us to kind of go over too. This is a reporter who was talking about Dikembe Mutombo after he passed.
And you met Dikembe Mutombo.
Oh, boy, did I.
Yeah. You met him in a locker room, right?
Oh, boy, did I.
And wasn't
I'll
he?
never forget it. Never forget
What's up,
it.
Mom?
Yeah.
Pringles can?
Jumbo. We remember Dikembe Mutombo. He has a jumbo.
7'2"? 7.
And I'm 5 feet, so it was right there.
Right there. Okay.
Wonk.
Right there.
Wonk.
I never went in a locker room ever again after that. I said, I'm sorry, ESPN, I will stand outside.
Okay.
All right, who's ready to get stuck into some more Helldivers? Because we've got a lot to talk about today. The current terminated major order is winding down.
Sorry about that, guys. Let's go back. All right. So here's another one. where these are 12 women who pioneered the era of female sports broadcasters, okay? And these women, I just want you guys to kind of just briefly look at these women and how they look when they first. Here's a woman, she looks, average, normal, okay? Then you have, Phyllis George, 1971, Miss America, okay? So you see where they're picking these women from. They're picking them from, Miss America, a pageant, beauty pageant girls, okay? But she's dressed in a professional manner. You have her on with, guys who are legends in sports, okay? NFL Today, okay? So then we move on to Jane Kennedy, who took on the mantle after her. Jane Kennedy, African-American female sports host. She was also a beauty queen, okay? Everybody used to fantasize. She was, in Playboy. Everybody used to fantasize about, Jane Kennedy, okay? Penitentiary 2, yeah. If you hadn't seen that, go check it out. It's a trip. Okay, Leslie Vizier, okay, look at her. Where'd they find her? Okay. She was radio and television, okay? Still, you see average-looking kind of women, So, the first two beauty queens, okay? So then you have this Gail Gardner. She looks regular old, for the time she might have been, pretty much considered to be a beauty queen herself, okay? Mary Carrillo. Not so much, okay? 1980s, okay? Gail Sears, okay? Not so much, okay? Then you get Robin Roberts, gay, okay? Not so much. Nobody's checking for her, okay? Go on. Hannah Storm, okay? Okay? Maybe that might be somebody's taste, still, all right. So we got this lady, Cassie Campbell, not so much, So then we get Doris Burke, maybe somebody's cup of tea. Okay, then we get down here. Oh, Lisa Guerrero. What about this screams, hey, respect me. I'm a sports reporter. Okay. So then we got Bonnie Bernstein. Okay, where they find her doesn't really say. Okay, so those are the kind of people that we're kind of looking at here. So then we go to. Here's the other article that I had here. Now that's just to give you a little taste of, I already covered that one. Okay. Here's the other one. Okay, this is on ESPN. The fight for women's sports reporters' access to locker rooms is history, or is it? Okay, so you had a lot of people looking at this. So here's one. Okay, 40 years ago today, on what was the first night of the World Series, of 1977 World Series, Major League. Okay, so it goes through Bowie Kuhn. Okay, so then we go to the Constitution, talks about the 14th Amendment. We already covered that. Okay, all right. So then we get down here and we talk about, while the courts decided our decision, our laws, it's up to us as a society to adjust our attitudes. So here's where that little part right there is what women are trying to do. They're trying to get us to adjust. So there's a bit of social engineering that they're trying to force on men. If we were to do the same thing, then it would be wrong. But when they try to force it on us to try to make us change our behavior, then it's right somehow. Okay, so here they go. They talk about Cam Newton when he was a Carolina quarterback. Okay, Newton's dismissive response to a female reporter's question reminded us we've still got a long way to go. While his words focused our nation's momentary attention on female sports reporters, we should not forget that his is only one voice in a booming alto chorus heard these days from Silicon Valley. Think Google Memo to boards and venture capital suites throughout the country. So here's when they bemoan, that nothing has changed, they haven't made any strides, and they still want access to places where they think are magical havens that men reside in, okay? So here we go further here. Newton's retort reflects his attitude and that of so many others. His words are also lingering echoes of the sports writers who in the 70s dismissed me with caustic disdain. Then they dished about me in conversations that Roger Angle revealed in Sharing the Beat, his 1979 New Yorker story about women's arrival on the various sports beats. Okay. So in October 1st, 1978 column, But Is She Serious? Leigh Montville, writing for the Boston Globe, challenged my right to be doing this job. I have only a few questions for the lady, meaning me, whoever the lady is that's writing this. I don't care about all of the wink and leer jokes about grown women going into a room where grown men are undressing. I just want to know if the lady is doing this job because she really wants to do this job. Is she some chick Miss America gimmick? Chic Miss America, chic, I think it is, Miss America gimmick that somehow has been chosen to fill out some television director's idea of a homogeneous cross section of America package, or is she for real? Is she serious? I think that is a question that's a relevant question. Are you here because you like sports? Are you here because you are truly serious about covering sports? Are you here because this is some job that they gave you as a result of you winning Miss America? I think any guy, any person would ask that question. I mean, when you look at a Miss America pageant and you hear them and they say, well, what do you want to do? I want to save the world. I want to go out and I want to keep people from killing whales, and I want to stop global warming. You hear things like that, and then next thing you know, you see these women in a locker room with a bunch of buck-naked men asking questions that they have, pre-written down about the game. At first, you struggle to take them seriously. Then as they get through the job and they learn the job, they begin to I guess, become comfortable with it enough to where you start to be comfortable with them. But along with that, there are certain things about their presentation that have to be appropriate for you to take them seriously. And you just coming in as a winner of the Miss America pageant is not enough, because if it was a man, he has to go to school, he has to go to college, he has to learn how to be a journalist, he has to learn how to interview, he has to do a lot of things to get to that place. So logically, other people are going to want to know, did you have to do these things to get to this place? And now with the Fox things going on, at Fox Sports, people are going to be asking the same age-old questions. Who did you sleep with to get this job? And why should I take you seriously? Excuse me. Why should I take you seriously? As you can see, they start ripping on Cam because he didn't give the right answer. And they assumed by him being dismissive that it was because he didn't like women. I'm beginning to think that Cam's having some of the problems that he's having today because of some of the old stuff that's still lingering in the background because he didn't answer questions the right way to a female journalist. Now, is that fair? And I tend to think that there's going to be a whole lot more pushback from men in this environment, especially with DEI stuff going on and all this stuff, where DEI was never, used for its intended recipients. It ended up being funneled off, to white women and gay folks as opposed to black people, And as we can see, the usual suspects are all here. The people who are getting all of this access and all this stuff, when they say women, they ain't talking about none of us. They never even really show any of us. If I hadn't showed you, Miss Kennedy there, you wouldn't have even seen a black woman. So let's move on. Okay. So the writer asked if we're in the clubhouse for showtime. Well, let's go back. Monteville peppered the lady with 45 questions. Did she ever spit in a baseball glove? Was her life absolutely dominated by sports when she was a kid? Did she ever try to hit a fairway wood? Yes, 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 as if answering any of those questions with a yes qualified me or any man or woman for the job. Well, it kind of does. You see, she doesn't even see the relevance of why any of those questions will be important. Those questions are important because it shows that you have a love for sports, that you have lived it, smelled it, wallowed in it. You aren't just a pretty face. You've gotten sweaty before. That's why these questions are relevant. So he goes on and says his questions, she goes on and says his questions derived dribbled on and on. In the next Sunday paper, Leslie Vizier, the only female sports reporter at the Globe, had her say in a column headline, "He asked for it, so he'll get it. My answer." The writer asked if we are in the clubhouse for showtime. That means, I guess, to see the buck-naked men. Okay, so Vizier wrote, yes, he does not bat an eye when a reporter in this town says and is quoted, why do women who want to go into the locker room always have to be dogs? So there he's saying, let me just go ahead and translate that. Why are all the ugly women trying to go in to the locker rooms where all these men are in various forms of undress? And for a man, he's thinking, well, none of these women would get the time of day in a normal, normal environment. Nobody's going to be looking for them. So they may be trying to get a different kind of access by getting into the locker room. Inappropriate, but to me, it's funny. Okay? All right. So why can't it be a good-looking broad? Does that man really deserve to be in there before us? Okay. She's asking a question, do these men deserve to be in there before the women? Okay, so it's gone for decades back and forth in our own battle of the sexes. Only now the question of whether women belong in sports is happening at a fever pitch on social media, with misogynistic comments too lewd to publish here and threats to women's safety. Okay. With women now broadcasting football and baseball games on national TV, trolls show up in force to remind them they shouldn't be there. She doesn't belong in a booth with men discussing a game she knows nothing about. See? The same questions are being asked. This has been going on for decades. Ever since the 70s, this has been going on. They've been asking the same questions. And here we have the same questions being asked again. Because it's relevant. Because when you check these women's backgrounds, especially some of the ones that we're seeing in these stories that have been popping off today here, guess what? They don't have a sports background. Guess what? They're doing things behind the scenes that we know about now in this lawsuit, with Fox. I mean, that we are been told that women don't do. Women don't do these things. It's always forced upon them. They're not out here negotiating for places by using sex and access to their bodies. That's what they've always said. They were never interested in any of that. But then when the lawsuit comes out, we see that not only are they interested in it, yeah, they're conducting it. But the one lady that doesn't engage in that, she doesn't get the same access, so then it becomes a problem. And then the light shined on it. But this is normal. But people are trying to act like it's not normal, that these things don't occur. Okay? Okay, so let's move on. All right. So with women now broadcasting football and baseball games, okay, on national TV, trolls show up in force to remind them they shouldn't be there. She doesn't belong in a booth discussing a game when she knows nothing about it. Okay. It's like watching a game with a girlfriend, and Jessica Mendoza is that annoying sister your mom makes you bring everywhere. Okay? Radio sports broadcaster, writer Julie DeCaro observed in the New York Times after Beth Moen's debut in the booth of Monday Night Football that the moment Moens spoke a word into her microphone, Twitter lit up with complaints about her voice. DeCaro quoted longtime NFL reporter Andrea Creamer as saying she has no doubt that hating the sound of her voice is code for I hate that there was a woman announcing football. No, it's your voice is annoying. How many men say today that, okay, when football's going on, I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to be disturbed. That's my time to be a guy and to enjoy my guy things. So again, men establishing that this is a man's space that I'm in. And I want it to remain a man's space, but more and more we're seeing women push their way on the sidelines, in commentary, every aspect of the reporting part of sports, where this used to be for men, by men, and that was okay. But we can't have anything. Today, men are being told you can't have anything that's uniquely yours, but women have things that are uniquely theirs, and we're expected to stay out of it all the time. So all this equality that they talk about is false. It's false. And when men and women come in close proximity to each other, especially when one is attractive and she's a female, things are going to happen. Men are going to want it, I guess is what I'm saying. Men are going to want to shoot their shot. And for women to expect them not to want to shoot their shot is incredibly stupid. And to, at every turn, have a lawsuit and have men lose their assets and all kinds of stuff for being men, not doing anything that's violent or that's outside of the normal behavioral patterns of a man is insanely stupid. And we need to really stop this, because it's gotten just stupider and stupider to a fever pitch year after year. Okay, so let's finish this up. Okay. So time marches on. Early this year, women marched again. Okay, here we got them marching like we did in the 70s. Why? Because attitudes seem frozen in a bygone era. Women in sports media are canaries in the coal, in our societal coal mine. They are targeted now, as I once was, because our livelihoods intersect. Here we go with intersectionality again. So see, they're taught these things. They're taught a script, and they're sticking to the script. Everything's intersectional, and intersectionality is only a tool by which white women became the focus, as opposed to black people being the focus of discrimination and efforts to better their position in society and be seen equally. But all that got pushed to the wayside from the very jump. Okay? So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more of it. This is an effort by white women to take more and more and more, and they're using the same script. Just listen. Anytime they use intersection or intersectionality, any of that, that is a dog whistle. Okay? All right. So here we go. They are targeted now, as I once was, because of our livelihoods, intersect with sports. Okay, supposedly displacing men in a place many believe is rightfully theirs. I believe it's rightfully theirs also. It's ours. Sports is ours. You ain't supposed to be there. Sorry. If you like sports, be out in the stands. Spectate just like everybody else. You know? But don't put yourself in a position where you may be accosted, you know, and then you look at everybody and go, look what happened, as if people are not going to say, that's like you running out and jumping in front of a moving car, lady, and not expecting to be hit. Okay. So she goes on to say, not so long ago, sports were a men's only environment. Changes did not come easily. So there you got to have again where they always try to change the environment to basically make that all male environment into a welcoming environment for them. And now she's going to throw in Billie Jean King. That no man cared about that. No man cared about what she was doing. Okay, so Title IX enforced. A rise in women's athletes. Pioneering women of my era showed up, fought for their rights, and stuck around in press boxes and locker rooms. We felt the backlash. 4 decades later, I'm angry that women feel it still. Last week, the Washington Post sports columnist Sally Jenkins wrote a 2017 version of the Montevideo 1978 column. I need Cam Newton's help, she began. Maybe after he opens a jar for me, he can explain which end of the football goes in front. See, I'm female, and as a member of the sex that burns the toast, certain concepts elude me, such as astrophysics and football. I'll make him a trade. I'll tell him how babies get born if he will tell me how to turn on a car. It's so funny when females try to talk about things they shouldn't. It's just funny to me. Depends, I guess, on who is listening. Okay, that's Melissa Lukey, is a writer of memoir of Lukey versus Kuhn. And there she is, burnt up. All right, so there's her, you know, trying to establish her importance in the sports, arena. I think that was crass as all get out to try to talk about Cam like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Cam, went, he saw, he went, he conquered. You know, what are you doing? Ma'am, you're writing and talking about the people who are actually out there doing and being something that is worth spectating by millions of other men, who think that it's important. But you don't think it's important. You think that you should just be there and you should just, be able to say and do whatever you want and make that into a male female type of environment when it's not meant to be that. It was never meant to be that. You guys, that they've done the same thing with the military. They've done the same. Everything that they've been involved with, they have watered down into weakness and decrepity. And it's unfortunate, No one's asking the relevant questions. No one's actually trying to solve the issues. They just, they are afraid of lawsuits. They're afraid of pissing off the beehive and, having, millions and millions of women come out in protest against, sports and whatnot, and, I think that people ought to just stop doing that. People need to learn how to stand up for things. If you're going to be here and you're going to be a professional, then go to school, be a professional, come out here. Don't come out here in a bunch of revealing stuff, Don't put yourself in compromising positions, and let's try not to make, the environment for the athletes uncomfortable. Did anybody think about the athletes and how they felt about, women seeing them in various forms of undress? Nobody thinks about that. When we talk about today, talk about women being, accosted and whatnot. Everybody's like, that's got to be incredibly difficult for the woman. And I'm sure it is. But when the coin is flipped, no one ever gives two shits about how the men feel in the same situation. Nobody asks those men, "Oh, you guys have a problem with seeing women in here? We're having women in the locker room with your balls hanging out and whatnot." I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a situation with Derek Fisher where one of the female reporters said that he was gripping his member and exposing himself while she was in there. Lady, it's a men's locker room. What if Derek was in there scratching his balls? What if he had an itch or something? What if he was repositioning himself? But, they never think about those things. Maybe, maybe you should have been looking at that. Maybe you should have been looking at his face while you were asking questions or whatever. Maybe you should keep your eyes at chest and head level, But, we can't expect them to do that, can we? Okay. So, here's another little passage where they talk about that. Let me get it here. Okay. So, all right, there's a little passage here where it says we're talking about where regulations were requiring for all teams to provide both equal access, men and women equal access, opening up locker rooms. And it said Thomas in 1990 was when this happened, okay? And then 1982, National Hockey League made it a formal rule to allow equal access to locker rooms for all reporters. So this is the groundswell that happened after the ruling allowing the first females into the locker room. Okay, so here's one where Chambers, Steiner, and Fleming in 2004. In fact, hockey and basketball were two major sports that had allowed women in the locker rooms without question. Even before the ruling, they were allowing access in 1976, and according to Lookie, in 1990, the National Basketball Association, which gave women equal access without rancor. Says here, let me find the one. Okay, let's see. Say through mass media and sports culture, spoke to successive cohorts of the 20th century males as they contended with the booms, busts, wars, and migrants as a mass narrative of masculinity. Sports was able to provide points of identification, masculine regroupment, and symbolic affirmation in a social landscape with constantly changing gender, class, racial, and ethnic relations. Here, then, I want to relocate the evolution of the sports media complex with one of the most important social dimensions with which it interacted. The shifting gender order essentially means sports was the last refuge for men who were being faced on a daily basis with the women's movement. So, this passage is basically letting you know that this was one of the last refuges for men from the daily intrusions of the women's movement. Okay, so beginning in the 1920s, men's leading role in society was being challenged, and they no longer knew where they stood. They were able to turn to sports, the last place that was truly considered masculine, to help them with their identity issues in the changing society. So women, again, think that we have identity issues, and this is where you hear them say that, we are, what's the word that they use? Oh God, it's slipping my mind. They always use these words of us not being secure, insecure, and with our position. And anytime something comes up, we have questions about our masculinity and our place in the world. It has to be some complex thing rather than us just not wanting to be bothered. Okay, so identity issues, that just pisses me off. Okay, for many years, this remained true until the 70s. Then women began to enter the locker rooms. No, you forced your way into the locker rooms, into a place where nobody wanted you, and enter the final masculine frontier. So see, this was just some place, like I said, they think this is some magical place, walled off place that they had to gain entrance into in order to fix right the wrongs in the world, So then she goes on to say, some men who grew up with this mentality were reluctant to let go of that frontier. Men often lashed out at the women in the locker room. Some of these actions were done just to make the women feel uncomfortable in the locker room. Some players made rude comments. So see, it's just crazy, the things that these male athletes had to go through. And now today, we have these issues where, you have people who are trying to allow, it's funny, trans men access to women's locker rooms. And look what happened. Women are totally against it. And so are men. Men are totally against it, So in this instance, I guess logic prevails, but in the past, they couldn't see why women should not have access to men's locker rooms. And that is crazy, don't you think? So I guess with that being said, I guess I've covered everything that I need to on this. But you guys, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'm glad to be back with you guys. I hope you guys like the show. I hope the fans were not too loud and the audio is appropriate. I gotta start learning how to edit these videos too, so you'll have that piece. I'm just going to leave that piece in there where they had the Hell Divers get off, and that's my favorite game, by the way. Like I said, we will we'll end it there. You guys let me know what you think about the show and the concepts that we talked about, and I guess we'll see you the next time. You guys have a great day, night, or evening, whenever you're listening.
You are listening to Abuki Kabal, the analytical savage.